White Pass and Yukon route is located on 231 2nd Avenue in Skagway, Alaska. Also, the railroad runs between Skagway, Alaska and Carcross, Yukon Territory, and it used to go all the way up to Whitehorse. And also, trains no longer do. And the railroad even crosses the Canada-Alaska border, and the trip takes you 800 feet above the Skagway River near the original trail of the Stampeders. The track gauge of the railroad is a 36-inch gauge rail line. Also, the railroad had chose narrow gauge, which was a lot cheaper, and the line was built in 1898. And the builders blasted their way through the mountain within 2 years, and the railroad was born during the Klondike Gold Rush as a means of reaching the gold fields. Also, it is a rare story in the history of the railroad building, and for the railroad, it was gold discovered in 1896 by George Carmack and two Indian companions, Skookum Jim and Dawson Charlie. Also, the railroad was all built by hand, and also crews had to blast their way through the rocky points and then sheer cliffs to get past slippery rock, then cutted through Tunnel Mountain, and then trailed a switchback through Dead Horse Gulch, and then made it up to the summit of White Pass. Also, the line was born of the Klondike Gold Rush of 1897 when a coastal steamer pulled into Seattle, Washington, piped by the headlines of stacks of yellow metals and tales of dazzling riches. The stampede up to Klondike was on. The easiest part was getting from Vancouver to Skagway, Alaska. Also, each man carried supplies to the Yukon, and many lifted over the Chilkoot one backpack at a time, and the White Pass is longer than the Chilkoot, but not as steep, and pack horses were driven to their deaths. Also, 3 separate companies were organized to build a rail link from Skagway to Fort Selkirk, Yukon, 325 miles away. Largely financed by British investors, a railroad was soon under construction. The track gauge was chosen by railway contractor builder Michael James Henney. Also, an excursion train hauled passengers for 4 miles out of Skagway and was the first train to operate in Alaska. The railroad reached Bennett, British Columbia in 1899, and in the summer that year, construction started north from Carcross to Whitehorse, 110 miles just north of Skagway, Alaska. The entire line was completed in 1900. The trestle that's on the mountain line was built in 1901 and was the tallest railroad bridge in the world and is over 215 feet above the valley, and today it is abandoned. And also, when you're on the mountain line, you even will be going through 2 tunnels, and one called Tunnel Mountain. In 1982, the railroad was closed and people thought it would never run again until in 1988 was partially revived as a heritage railway and reopened as the White Pass and Yukon route. White Pass route, I should say. Also, the train makes a stop at Bennett Lake in Bennett, British Columbia, and where you can step off the train to see the old town and also the famous Chilkoot Trail that comes into Lake Bennett and makes some stops at other stations like Carcross. And also, to see where all the train makes a stop, be sure to check the web. In 2014, there was a derailment and the line was eventually cleared up as well. Also today, the White Pass in Yukon is used as a tourist line for passengers to experience the scenery on board the train, and even has freight trains run on the rails as well. In 2018, it was announced that the railroad would be bought by Carnival Cruise Lines. Also today, the railroad is a subsidiary of Club Link and operated by the Pacific and Arctic Railway and Navigation Company, which is in Alaska, and the British Columbia Yukon Railway Company in British Columbia, and the British Yukon Railway Company, which was originally known as the British Yukon Mining, Trading and Transportation Company, which used the trade name White Pass and Yukon Route. Also, the railroad headquarters are in Skagway, Alaska as well.